of the European Union, the Instrument for Partnership. And I also would like to give a special thank to Hilde Hardeman, who is here with us. She's the director of the Instrument of Partnership in the Foreign Service of the European Union. And thank you very much, Hilde, to be with us. And I also see that we have our colleague, Luis Felipe Lopez Calva, the regional director of UNDP. Luis Felipe has just been involved in the launch of an amazing bond in Mexico of the SDGs. So I'm sure we will hear a lot about that. We want to welcome everybody, and let me say a couple of words of what we are expecting. At UN Women, we believe that investing in women's economic empowerment sets a direct path towards gender equality, towards poverty eradication, and towards the inclusive economic growth that we desperately need now after this horrible pandemic that has affected us for the last 9 months. We believe investing in women is a good business. And I'm so happy to have so many entrepreneurs and private sector leaders that I'm sure they will confirm this. Investing in women is a good business. It's not just a good decision because of human rights and because of ethical and moral, but it's also a good business. Investing with a gender perspective brings greater economic benefits for the families, for communities. So women have this transformative power and need access to larger amount of capital to develop their full potential. It has been amazing, the microcredit, but women have a much larger transformative capacity. So they need access to bigger credits, to bigger investment capacity. This is why we firmly believe that investing in women is not only a fundamental ethical imperative, but also an excellent business. The European Institute of Gender Equality estimates that implementing gender equality standards into the European economy could increase the GDP per capita up to 10%. And at McKinsey Global Institute, they reported that 12 trillion could be added to the global GDP by advancing women's equality by 2025. But despite all these efforts to really clarify the importance of investing in women, both in Latin America and Europe, there is still a gender unequal representation of women in the financial environment. A terribly unequal representation, I would say. That's why I'm so pleased to see all these amazing women that are with us today. In Latin America, investments in women companies are still very underrepresented, with impact investment as only as 22% are made in companies with least one female founder. And if all female founders are considered, the invested percentage drops to 8%. This is something that Value for Women has been studying, and those are the horrible numbers that we are facing. But I'm sure that we can accelerate when we are all together in this initiative. In the case of Europe, and according to the document prepared by the IE University under the leadership of Susanna, the figures are not very encouraging either. In 2018, over 90% of capital raised by tech companies backed by European venture capital went to teams that did not have a single woman founder, a single woman at this stage in age. So as UN Women Regional Office, we are firmly committed to continue our efforts to join allies so that innovative financing can be used to deploy the resources needed in the region to fulfill the 2030 agenda, and of course, especially to comply with the Sustainable Development Goal number 5 of gender equality. And we are currently developing a proposal for the establishment of an innovative financial initiative to increase bi-regional Latin America, Caribbean, and European Union women-led innovation and business ventures. If we emphasize the return potential of genderless investment, emerging markets such as Latin America and the Caribbean continue to show higher returns than developed markets. In the case of Europe, venture capital firms with only 10% more female investment partners have achieved 1.5% higher return on funds. And companies founded by women performance, on average, 63 better in the long term than the startups founded exclusively by men. So we have a business case there that we have to really go out there and tell it. So we know that the global COVID pandemic has had a strong impact, not only in the health field, but also in social, economic, even cultural and political arenas. And also the increase of countries' financial needs and the slowdown in business and banking activities put us in a very, very risky scenario where women are facing even more greater barriers in accessing finance. But you know, we are the solution to many problems that COVID has presented us, provided that those barriers, we work together to remove them. So we are very grateful. We are very grateful also to have the European Investment Bank, Hsbc, the foundation of Bbva, the Microfinance Foundation, the multilateral banks presence like the IFC, and of course the Council of America with Susan Siegel. We are very, very pleased, and also UNDP, and of course ILO, our partner. And especially I would like to say that we have an amazing fighter for gender equality among us, Margot Wallstrom and Toraya Obaid, who joined us today. So it is important that we all together, we try to move forward this agenda. And I thank you very, very much, all of you. Thank you. Marinés, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Maria Noel. This event wouldn't be possible without the partnership with IE University, and I would like to give the floor to Susana Malcorra, Dean of IE School of Global and Public Affairs. Please, Susana Malcorra, you have the floor.
Thank you, Maria Inés, and good morning, good afternoon, good early evening to everybody. We have a very broad audience, and we also have a broad representation around these panels. Not only we have people from Latin America and the Caribbean, we have people from Europe, and we also have people from the Middle East. So it's a really, really broad representation. And why is it that we have this partnership with UN Women? We, as a School of Public and Global Affairs, are part of an institution that has a very strong business leg, a business school. And we think that when we talk about enabling women, empowering women, it is critical that we focus on the economic and financial aspects. The economic empowerment is at the center. So that's what led us to partner with UN Women and to put together this work that has been prepared in the school by my colleagues, Patricia Galvaldón and Paula Kohler Alonso. What they did is they had a view on the investment with the gender lens in Europe. And why did we do that? Why did we start from Europe? Because we felt that since this is something to look into the broad relationship between Latin America and the Caribbean and Europe, it was good to zoom into Europe, assuming that Europe will show stronger numbers. And it was surprising to see that as much as Europe has advanced this agenda in many fronts, in the specific area of women empowerment and in investment with the gender lens, that has not been the case. Maria Noel has already referred to some figures that are included in the paper. Let me just add a few more. While women make up of 52% of the total European population, they only account to 34.4% of the self-employed and 30% of startup entrepreneurs. This is information from the European Commission. In 2016, the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor showcased that from all surveyed regions, Europe had the lowest female involvement in early stage entrepreneurial activity, just 6%. So there are many signs that show that a region like Europe that is advanced in implementing policies that empower women in many areas still have a way to go regarding this specific arena that we are discussing today. And from our perspective, it will make a huge difference to think about this aspect of women empowerment, the financial aspect, the economic aspect. And that requires solutions both from the supply side and from both sides of the coordinate. So that is something that we want to foster in this discussion. We want to first showcase some good solutions that are working, but we also want to alert that those solutions are not very, very broadly known and very broadly used. And this is true for a region like Europe. You can imagine what happens in a region like Latin America, where, for example, the access to banks by women is much lower than the access to banks by men. And the same happens in other regions of the world where I have happened to work in the past. So our intention today is to have a conversation that looks into good examples, that sort of puts the question on the table, how can we really work on this path to replicate these good examples, and how can we make governments exercise their role in setting frameworks, in setting regulations that really make the participation of women a central part on any initiative that they produce. So this is our intention. We hope to have a very lively conversation. Beyond the two great panels that we have, we will end up with a closure by my good friend, Thoraya Bay. I want to thank Thoraya especially. She is the chair of Women 20. You know that the G20 is taking place in Saudi Arabia. So Thoraya is leading the charge with Women 20. And I'm sure she will give us a strong sense of what has been produced in the deliberations that have taken place. And I know from Women 20 from Argentina, there have been a lot of deliberation in these matters. So without further delay, let me give you the floor again, Maria Ines, and I really look forward to having a very fruitful engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We would like to highlight that this activity is part of the Win-Win program, Gender Equality Means Good Business. This is a joint program of UN Women, the International Labour Organization, and the European Union, which seeks to contribute to the achievement of gender equality through women's participation in the workforce, entrepreneurship, economic empowerment, and therefore their full and equal participation in society. ILO has been a UN partner of us for many years, and now we are very pleased to work with them in this journey. I would like to give the floor to Vinicius Piñeiro, Assistant Director General and Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean of ILO. Please, Vinicius, you have the floor now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marinés. It has been a privilege to work with the UN Women on this initiative and many others, and also to join in particular this activity with the IE. And thank you as well to the European Union for co-sponsoring the activity. So it's a very timely panel, because in these difficult times, we are all in search of motivation and inspiration. You know, the pandemics has exacerbated the worst and the best in our societies. The worst, inequalities, informality, the lacking access to basic services, including digital services, gender inequalities in particular, vulnerabilities, lack of decent work everywhere. The best, the resilience, the capacity to adapt, to innovate, to survive under very difficult situations and contexts. The caring, I think, is an important element that has come along as well, and in particular the capacity to manage risks and take decisions under very complex conditions and uncertainty. So this is a kind of attributes and attitudes that we are all looking for. And if you look at what's happening, in particular in terms of managing this crisis, I mean, we all know that countries that are led by women have done pretty much better in terms of controlling the pandemic so far than New Zealand and Germany, Finland, Denmark is just some of the examples. And at the micro level, and even at the behavioral level, if you look at some recent research by Gallup in the US, where masks, in places where masks are not mandatory, but recommended, 67% of women, they are wearing masks, and against 56% of men. And I'm sorry about putting this example, but it's just to show that perhaps wearing a mask is the most simple and rational decision that one can take under the circumstances, and look, the most cost-effective decision. So it's really something that shows the capacity, to gender-specific capacity. So the question that I think would be important to make is, if you were like to provide a loan to provide some financing, to whom should we give in under these circumstances? And so there's a question to reflect to the panel. So in the framework of the Win-Win program, thank you so much, Marines, for highlighting that. We have been looking at what are the deficiencies in the conditions affecting access to financing by gender, by sex. And among the obstacles, we have found that, of course, legal and regulatory systems are still a major element that needs to be addressed, and this is part of the institutional, let's say, reform. Effective policy leadership and coordination for specific promotion of woman entrepreneurship development programs. So it's something that we need active policies in terms of pushing forward. Lack of access to gender-sensitive kinds of business support. Access to markets and technologies still a lot very unbalanced. And also representation of women in participation, in particular in public policy dialogue, but also in boards, in decision-making processes. And if there is one thing that is most relevant, in particular for this discussion, is the lack of women's entrepreneurs' participation in generic financing programs. So this is something that has been highlighted as well by Maria Noel. In specific financing programs targeted to women-owned enterprises. So this is clear an area that needs, as I said, active policies in terms of promotion. And just to mention some of the more constraints, more specific constraints, in particular in the area of financing. For example, the issue that collateral requirements for an interest are too high, and they are sometimes discriminatory towards women. And in many cases, the amount of the approved loan is too small, so we have a lot of small applications and a lot of bureaucratic process. Personal guarantee, in some cases, we got any request for loan has to be a guarantee by the partner, by the husband, or by a male, or requirements of consignor, or other types of requirements that are gender specific. So this is kind of something that we need to work on. So for us, it's very important to think outside the box, and in particular to unleash, because as I said, this is a moment we need innovation, we need ideas, we need to inspiration to move forward, and we can't afford to stay as we are. That's why it's so important to engage in activities like this, in particular in Latin America, where the financing gap for companies led by women is so impressive. So it's time to take action. I think it's important to create business different instruments to boost gender equality at all levels, in particular at the investment and financing level. And that's why I'm quite eager to listen to the experiences. And again, thank you so much, Win Woman, IE, and the colleagues from the European Union for supporting this initiative. Thank you so much.
Many thanks, Vinicius. This project and event wouldn't be possible without the financial support of the European Union. It's a pleasure for me to give the floor to Mrs. Hilde Hardeman, Head of the Foreign Policy Instrument Service of the European Commission. Please, Mrs. Hardeman, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Dear Maria Noel, dear Susanna, dear Vinicius, dear all. My thanks, our thanks to the Win-Win program, together with Instituto de Empresa, for gathering us all together to push the agenda of innovative financing and women empowerment. It's the right moment to do so. It's always the right moment to do so, but now we are really facing a paradoxical situation. Women entrepreneurs are, according to studies by the World Bank and the WTO, key drivers of inclusive growth and economic and social well-being. They redefine the meaning of success, very often providing social and environmental benefits to the community they live in. In the EU, for instance, we see high comparative rates of women in social enterprises with triple impact as compared to traditional male-owned business. At the same time, according to recent surveys, this time from the World Bank and from Facebook, globally, female-owned businesses are considerably more at risk of closure than male-owned businesses. And one of the reasons for that is the financing gap for women entrepreneurs, which, again, according to the World Bank, is estimated at $285 billion. The same structural barriers apply when it comes to accessing specific state-supported coronavirus loans. So while our societies and economies need more women entrepreneurs, we are not providing adequate financial tools. So how can we address this paradox? Firstly, it's true for almost everything by working together. We are stronger together. And that is why the EU and its member states seek to partner with countries across the world. It's also why we join forces with the UN, with the ILO, with the private sector, like we are doing through this Win-Win program, to combine the EU's political will and resources, the international mandate of the UN, and of course the crucial engagement of the private sector. That's the first thing, working together. Second, the financial sector and policymakers have to design recovery financial tools while looking through gender lenses all the time. And we need leadership in doing so. The 750 billion euro recovery plan, Next Generation EU, which the European Union has recently adopted, puts a particular focus on a fair and inclusive recovery for all. Measures of particular pertinence to women, for instance, fair binding minimum wages, or like one of you already said, access to broadband internet for everybody, are key. We need to make sure that the financial instruments that are developed as COVID response are gender responsive. And for our president, Ursula von der Leyen, this is a key concern. She's very strongly committed to that. Now, together with offering financial tools, the EU also supports numerous women entrepreneurs platforms, both inside the European Union and outside. Outside our borders, we support, for instance, the creation of the Latin American Women Entrepreneurs Network, which is created under this Win-Win program in which we are all participating. And I really congratulate you for setting up this network. Let's connect women entrepreneurs on both sides of the ocean and connect these with leaders and policymakers, because our vision of the future is similar and we have to work together. Let's connect and let's make sure that women have the right gender-sensitive financial tools to make their projects come true. We will all benefit. We will all get inspired by the positive impact and transformation women entrepreneurs will bring, because empowered women really work wonders. Thank you so much, and let's work on this together.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for your welcoming remarks. And I would like now to turn again to Maria Noel Baeza, who will be the moderator of our first panel.
Thank you very much, Marine. Thank you very much, Hilde and Susana, and also our partner, Vinicio from ILO. Let me now start by inviting the amazing panel that we have with us. And I would like to start with Luis Felipe Lopez Calva, the Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean of UNDP, who is with us. And I would like immediately to give him the floor. Go ahead, Luis Felipe. Thank you.
Maria Noel, thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this conversation, and thank you also to Susana Malcorra for also this opportunity and for leading in terms of these conversations, and of course to Vinicius, great colleague and partner. So I would like to mention all by name, but thank you for allowing me to be part of this stellar panel. So I will mention two very concrete things because I know that time is limited. We can continue the conversation, but I wanted to start by saying that we all know the importance of the empowerment of women in many respects, normative and instrumental. And we always argue from UNDP that we need to empower the realms in which we empower women is, within the household, within the community, and in terms of society as a whole. And that involves institutional aspects, that involves social norms, that involves also the functioning of markets. So I would like to emphasize now the financial and economic aspect of this, not because it's the only one, but it's because it is the one that brings us together today. Very important in our region, in Latin America and the Caribbean, we see it also in Europe, the idea that there is a very serious problem of productivity. And part of that is the issue of misallocation. The idea that labor doesn't go to its more productive use, and capital is also not going to its more productive use. And we have in front of us a huge problem of misallocation, which is the problem that women cannot participate, for example, in the labor markets, that women cannot accumulate assets, use them more intensively, and get the right returns for their assets. So it is like the first order massive problem of misallocation that has this instrumental element of having an important impact on the productivity, growth, and inclusion for the society as a whole. So that is the micro elements that we need to address very seriously. So in terms of, for example, accumulation of assets, property rights that do not allow women to use their assets as collateral. Or Maria Noel was saying, the issue is not that women are risk averse. The issue is that financial markets act in a way that it's actually the lenders who are risk averse, and they don't have the elements to actually really send the capital to those who can make more productive use out of it. So all this requires very proactive action. It's not going to happen spontaneously. We need proactive public policy. Again, on the institutional side, looking at how markets are not working and trying to have an incidence on how these markets work, even through regulation and some affirmative action clauses, and also removing constraints to that. That's at the micro level. But I also want to talk about the macro level and the idea that our discussions on financing for development has to be more engendered as well. I want to mention two aspects. One is the standards that we as UNDP just launched, standards for the private equity funds, how they can be more aligned to SDGs, and they have a very strong gender focus. I think we have to promote them, we have to use them, we have to make the markets react to these standards. And finally, the last experience that actually Maria Noel mentioned. So we as UNDP accompanied the government of Mexico in the launch of the first, as considered by the market, the first truly sovereign SDG fund, SDG bond. Why? Because it doesn't have any guarantees. It's really a sovereign bond that was issued fully structured based on SDG agenda, mainly on the social aspects of the SDG agenda, not really as a typical sustainable fund. There are many green bonds, in the market. This is more a sustainable development bond in the sense that it emphasizes social aspects to it. But I want to tell you something. When we accompanied the ministry, the team of the ministry, to the roadshow throughout Europe to offer the bond to investors, very important large investors were asking UNDP. We issued an alignment letter to inform the investors about the alignment of the objectives of this bond. We kept getting these questions about gender. So investors, in very, very large investors in the market, are asking about the alignment of these policies to gender objectives, and there is appetite for investing in this type of bonds with that perspective. So we know, we have said for many years that gender policy is a smart economics, but actually it's also smart investment, and now it's becoming more and more evident. This bond collected 750 million euros, but it was more than 4 times oversubscribed. And again, the issue was not only the sustainable aspect of it, but the social aspect of the bond. So I want to tell you that this experience brought to our attention very clearly, with very objective indicators in the market, that there is demand. Susana Malcorra was just saying we have to look at the demand side. When there is a demand side, so we need to engender more strongly our discussions on financing for development. So both at the micro elements and at the more macro level, we as UNDP want to continue collaborating with the European Investment Bank, with UN Women, with ILO, with all the partners, with the European Commission, to try to bring this to the attention of policymakers. And again, I think we are on the right track. We need to be even more proactive. So thank you again for allowing UNDP to be part of this conversation.
Thank you very much, Luis Felipe, and congratulations for the standards that you published yesterday, that Argentina launched yesterday, because it really shows the need for an ecosystem for this kind of investment to really grow. The impact management, the impact intelligence, and the impact facilitating that you mentioned in these amazing guidelines. And for us, in this initiative of the Win-Win program, we have been trying to put together intelligence and also understanding the management and the barriers that women face for the genderless investment. So, and also thank you for bringing up the financial for development aspect, because it's the last report of OCDE, DAG, mentioned that the investment directly in women of the financial for development is less than 10%. So if we don't tackle these issues from the macro level, but also from the micro level, as you said, we will never advance, unfortunately. So thank you so much for bringing this aspect to the conversation. Now I would like to give the floor to Bbva Dustar. She is the head of innovative financing in the European Investment Bank. And also, I want to say that Bbva is the author of an amazing report that has bring about all the aspects of risk and entrepreneurship and women that we need so much to know. So we are very, very happy to have you, Bbva. So go ahead, you have 10 minutes. And thank you, Luis Felipe, for being on time as well.
Okay, let me make sure I do my part as well. Thank you very much for having me here today with you all. It is a true honor, actually, for the EIB to be part of this event. Indeed, we are working closely with many of you and hope to increase our partnership with those we haven't yet worked together. I'm representing the advisory side of the European Investment Bank, and my focus is actually mainly on the EU. I'm focusing actually, I mean, innovation for me has two actually focuses. One is financing of innovation. So, and the other one is, in order to finance innovation, we need to bring in actually financial innovation. So so it really is quite critical. And what really I think for the European Investment Bank has been over the last few years an increasingly important objective is to bring in the gender smart lens, investing lens into our operations. We have made some very good progress, in particular outside of the EU, but I believe that it is also inside of the EU where perhaps the opportunities have not been as tangible to us, and we really do hope to bring that element into it. So as you may know, we have a strategy since December 2016 on gender equality and women empowerment, has these 3 pillars of protect, impact, and invest. Since 2018, we have invested in 430 million euro of projects outside and inside of the European Union. Much of that money has actually gone outside of the European Union in projects all over, the map. In Africa, there is something I cannot give you, unfortunately, the full details, but please do watch this space, because there is something in the pipeline which is actually quite exciting out of Brazil on the microfinance front as a COVID response in support of women. So it has all the right, I think, elements. And I wish I could announce it is in the works, but I do hope that you will, once it is out, this is the sort of projects that we hope to have much more of. Now, you mentioned earlier the report. I mean, in fact, it was authored by 2 of my colleagues in my team, but I supervised it. It was a report that was commissioned by the European Commission, the European, the innovation angle, DG RTD. And the focus really was, what is the situation of women entrepreneurs in Europe? Because there was a bit of we were kind of looking at the portfolio of EIB's own financing of innovative companies. And to be honest with you, we weren't sure whether it was just a matter of that that we just didn't have women-led companies that met our kind of size criteria or eligibilities, that they just didn't exist, or whether it was that they existed but they didn't know about the EIB or our products all over sort of the risk spectrum. So it really was actually an inquiry trying to understand what the situation is, a stock taking. And I think it really was an eye-opener to realize that indeed, we through PitchBook, we realized that there are actually a growing number of women-led companies in Europe, really meeting our innovative criteria, but for a number of reasons, either they are not aware of the fact that they could borrow from us, or they don't necessarily, see the need that, or there were all sorts of, reasons, or it was just too complicated. I mean, many reasons that are actually gender neutral. But the point was that we realized it's not enough for us to just be out to wait for people to knock at our door. We need to actually make a proactive outreach, just to make sure that we are known to the target sort of audience. On the other hand, we were also quite amazed when we looked at on the financing side, that indeed, and the study obviously has the numbers, how few funds are women-led on the VC front. And I guess we all have seen all the studies, and I saw again in the IE report, I was very pleased how aligned actually our findings were. I mean, in the sense that I think it just shows that the data is so unequivocally telling us the situation that, you need more diversity in investment teams in order to, the supply of financing needs to pull in also the demand of it. You cannot fix just a problem on one side, you need both sides. And here we basically, I think, feel that indeed at the European Union level, what is needed is perhaps much more targeted envelopes dedicated either at the as a limited partner towards these investment teams that are, VC funds, or in risk sharing with banks, so a dedicated envelope of money targeting women-led businesses. And on the demand side, a very proactive outreach to those companies so that they are aware and they get the financial advisory support. We do it across all the various thematic areas. We do it in AI, we do it in space. We are proactively reaching to all these innovative companies. Why not also proactively reach out to women-led companies? Why not have dedicated envelopes to also for women-led companies? We have it for all these other thematic areas. So I think it's a matter of just putting our, sort of mind to it. This is where we hope in the bank as advisory, we can kind of, push a bit the envelope. We work very well in close coordination with the European Commission. There is a new instrument, the European Innovation Council, the EIC, you may have heard of, which, innovative financing is a big word, but the EIC is clearly a very important source of financing for innovative companies. And what is very exciting is that they are right now really targeting women-led companies in deep tech, in the innovation space. So this is a really great opportunity for these companies to actually benefit from grants and equity, which is where very often the gap is on the innovation side. So with that, I would perhaps just conclude saying that, perhaps what really is needed is in Europe, not to believe that, to kind of be much more aware that it's not a situation that will correct itself automatically. We need to be proactive. We need to dedicate envelopes of financing for that. We need to track, we need to measure, we need to see how we are doing, because these are all the things we didn't do. We thought the forces of gravity would just resolve the situation. So I would conclude on that. I hope I'm fine with time, and really excited to be here. I hope we will collaborate even further with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiva, so much. This was super interesting, and we are very glad that we have you here today. And let me add, perhaps, that I mentioned that we heard in the last seminar, which is the training in accountability, the training in accounting, in business practices, the mentoring, all those things that are intangible, that perhaps they need a special dedication. We heard it from several of the banks that have started gender bonds. So we are so happy because now you have an amazing audience to really disseminate this idea of the EIC that you mentioned. So I'm sure you're going to have loads of women that are going to knock in your door, and we will make sure that those women go, because what we need is that opportunities for women to really have these investments and push them to take the risks. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I would like to invite now Stefan Moss, the Regional Chief Executive Officer for Europe, Latin America, and Canada from the bank Hsbc. Thank you. Are you there?
Hi, Maria Noel. I'll be stepping in for Stephen today. My name's Anushka Mehta.
Okay, Anushka, welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And Stephen, of course, sent his apologies for not being able to be here, but we're very honored to be part of the event, and it's a real personal pleasure for me to be speaking here today. So maybe just by way of very short introduction, I wear two hats at HSBC. The first is I am the global relationship banker for all the multilateral development banks in the Americas. And the second is that I am the head of Gender Lens Finance at HSBC, which I'm really excited to tell you more about today. So maybe just to kind of set the scene a little bit and for a bit of background, as most of you probably know, HSBC is a large global organization with presence in 64 countries, but that doesn't automatically make us diverse in every way. So in order to reflect and understand our customers, communities, suppliers, shareholders, we need to represent and embrace the ideas and perspectives of our employees and from the many different backgrounds from which they come. But importantly, we also need to recognize that given our size and our scale, there is more that we can do outside of our four walls and even outside of our industry to help move the needle for gender equality. As we know, and I don't think I need to re-emphasize that here too much, but women and women-led businesses of all types, in all sectors, all geographies, and across the value chain need capital and have largely been overlooked. And as a large global institution, we recognize that we need to leverage our capabilities and our products to address this issue. And that is the mission of Gender Lens Finance, to help women and women-led businesses gain access to the capital and resources they need and deserve. So would love to unpack that a little bit, if I may, and focus on three key questions today. The first one is, what is the commercial imperative and opportunity for the private sector in applying a gender lens? The second is, what have we done at Hsbc and what are we currently doing? And three, maybe to talk a little bit about the challenges that lie ahead and a sort of call to action, if you will. So let's start with the commercial imperative of applying a gender lens. And Maria Noel, I know you've already outlined this very, very clearly. Perhaps I can try and frame it a little bit from a private sector perspective. So in my opinion, I think that this can really be broken down into two sub-segments, if you will. The first is female representation within our own organization. I think the business case for diverse teams is well known, whether that's about better innovation capabilities, risk management, or even talent attraction. Data from McKinsey and many others over the years has highlighted that companies that have more diverse leadership outperform those who don't. And it is also increasingly important to all our stakeholders, including our clients. We're seeing that our clients want to work with teams that reflect their values and that can bring new innovative ideas to the table. So frankly speaking, failure to make progress in this area is no longer just a diversity and inclusion issue, it is a risk to our bottom line. The second piece that I wanted to highlight is supporting gender equality with our customers and in our communities in which we serve. As mentioned, even today, women and women-led businesses face significant challenges in accessing capital and resources needed to grow. These issues have only been further perpetuated through COVID-19. And again, I don't think I need to reiterate these, but just a couple of examples is the $1.5 trillion credit gap that exists for women, small and medium enterprises globally, and the fact that only 3% of venture capital dollars went to all female founded teams. I think we'll all agree that those are staggering statistics and they're not encouraging. I think it's also clear that these issues are still not fully understood. There was some recent data, I think, by Bloomberg's Gender Equality Index, that of the 325 firms who are part of it, and bearing in mind these are firms that are already focused on gender equality, only 55% allocate resources specifically to acquiring female customers. This suggests that businesses are falling short, right, in understanding and meeting the needs of women. Now, when you couple that with the fact that women are due to control 70 to 80% of consumer spending and make up a greater proportion of the labor workforce than ever before, there is a huge opportunity here for the private sector to really step up and to meet customer need. So I guess the next question is, so what have we done and what are we doing? So I think first and foremost, we need to practice what we preach internally. We need to drive change internally and bring more women into leadership positions. And at Hsbc, we are holding our senior management accountable for increasing senior leadership to 30% by 2020. So we've gone from 22%, give or take, in 2012 to about 29.4% by the end of last year. Now, whilst we're pleased with that progress, of course, we recognize there is even more that we need to do. And 30% is not enough. We need to keep moving forward, and we remain laser focused in ensuring that we continue to make positive change. Secondly, and the piece that is certainly close to my heart here, is that we are proactively integrating gender equality into our commercial strategy through our Gender Lens Finance group. Now, as part of that, we focus on three key components. The first one is access to capital. How can we as a big financial institution help to bridge the financing gap for women-led companies, female founders, etc.? We are building a pipeline with our clients across lending, across the bond space. I know gender bonds has been mentioned here already, and across trade finance, amongst others. to address this issue specifically. And actually, as we speak now, we are working on a live gender bond opportunity in Mexico. So very excited to be able to share more about that soon. The second is what I like to call activist capital. Capital which helps to promote female representation and other gender equality metrics. So as an example of this, we participated in the lending facility, which included women in leadership clause. This basically means that the interest the client pays can be reduced or increased depending on whether they meet or miss those targets respectively. So is there more of that sort of activist capital that we can look to be doing? And the final piece of the Gender Lens Finance strategy here is looking at products and services. What can we do to help promote and finance products and services to help improve gender equality more broadly? So be that in healthcare, education, and otherwise. You know, we are imploring our teams to look at every transaction and think, is there a way that we can paint a gender lens on this? Is there a way in what we're doing here can really move the needle for women? And finally, and importantly, in the context of what we are doing, we are trying to find ways to make it easier for female customers to overcome barriers, not just in accessing capital, but accessing networks and resources. And there are a couple of initiatives here that I'd love to highlight. One is called Mujeres al Mundo, which is a fantastic initiative that my colleagues in Hsbc Argentina launched. And the program aims to accelerate women's economic inclusion. The program so far has trained over 400 businesswomen and has helped them to expand their network and provided them with tools to boost their projects. And through this initiative, we are now helping an association of women-owned agribusiness companies in Argentina with their first transactions in European countries. I also see that we have the IFC on the line here, and we've worked with them on this initiative to really help move the needle. So a huge thank you to the IFC and for the partnership and for what we've done so far. The second initiative that I'd quickly like to highlight in this space as well is one that we've partnered through our global private bank. And it's a partnership with Albright, which is a network that helps to support female founders. And through this, we are helping support female founded businesses overcome the barriers to finding funding and providing them access to the bank's broader network to help build specific capability. So finally, what are the challenges that lie ahead? I am very encouraged so far of the progress that we've made both internally and externally through our discussions with our clients on this topic. And it is clear that it is of the utmost importance. However, there are sort of two challenges I'd like to highlight today, and maybe a call to action, if you will. The first challenge is that, we need to keep increasing momentum on change. And I think it's important to acknowledge that progress, even within HSBC, is maybe slower than we would have liked in a number of areas, including representation in our own senior leadership. HSBC is certainly a much more diverse and inclusive organization than it was even a few years ago, but there's certainly a lot more work that we can keep doing, and we recognize that. But something else that we recognize, and this is to borrow a phrase that I heard fairly recently, is that we certainly can't let perfection stand in the way of progress. And it is very much our responsibility as a large global institution to keep moving the ball forward within our own organization and also within the communities in which we serve. The second challenge, which I know has been outlined here today as well on a more immediate level, is that there is a risk that gender equality considerations take a backseat in the post-COVID recovery. Now, given the additional impact that we've seen on women, be that through employment, the burden of unpaid care, healthcare, gender-based violence, access to capital, the list goes on, I think leaving this behind would be a terrible mistake. And so that leads me to my call to action, which is I truly believe that there is power in the collective. There is more that we can do together to raise awareness and to scale our efforts. And it is important that we collectively ensure that this issue remains front and center through the economic recovery, so we can continue to further our efforts and not unwind the years of progress that we've made. Importantly, the full and equal participation of women stands us in much better stead to make a more robust recovery. So with that, we are always open to ideas and actions so that we can further this critical mission together. Thank you so much again for having us, and thank you again for all the ideas.
Anushka, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you and to know firsthand what HSBC is doing. yes, the initiative that you mentioned from Argentina is very well known, and hopefully we can have more of those everywhere in the region. I really like the way you put the challenges that we face behind and the risk of the COVID to put us further in the back seat. And this is something that with this call of action, we have to do it. We will never stop until we create this enormous ecosystem that convince men who has the financial power that it is a good business to invest in us. But I like what you said on the incentive of reducing interest rates if you see in the senior management women. I bet this will be something that men will look very, very deep. So I really like the creativity of having the creativity to bring women at the forefront of business. Although the panorama is a little bit, not very, not very promising, we will keep the strength and we will keep the energy, because that's the only way to go. And I agree with you, there is some progress that is happening. So we have to see that progress better. And with that, I would like to give the floor to Margot Wallström. She is the first Minister of Foreign Affairs who decided to invent this amazing, amazing new public policy of feminist foreign policy. And Margot has been amazing leader when she was in the Security Council. Everywhere she went, she was putting women first. So it's a real pleasure to have you, Margot, here today. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. And I have thought a lot about what can I contribute. I am not an economist, and my background is from politics. So maybe I can put us into the bigger picture and also say something about how economic empowerment became a crucial part of the feminist foreign policy. But will you please allow me to wave to Thoraya Obaid, because she's an amazing woman and an old friend, as well as Susana Malcorra, of course. They are rocks, and I'm very grateful for the friendship that we have. Now, when in preparing for this, I went back to some of the basic facts and the arguments for increased gender equality, because according to McKinsey, the global economy would grow by 26% if women and men were equal in working life. Research also shows that the proportion of household income spent on children's development increases significantly when women have greater control over the resources of the household. And that means something in the longer run. If women were able to farm on the same terms as men, 100 million people would avoid going hungry. And research also shows that gender equal societies are more peaceful. And a growing number of studies indicate that peace processes and peace agreements that include both women and men are more sustainable. So that is the bigger picture and the very convincing arguments for addressing this also with our foreign policy. When women participate in the labor market, their economic empowerment increases and a society's economic growth increases. Society also develops since women, more than men, invest their income in the local society and in children's health and education. And it is therefore not only right, but also socially smart to invest in women's economic empowerment. Despite this, many women lack economic rights and the opportunity to inherit own and use land and natural resources, be in paid employment, and get access to information and communication technology, financial services, and effective markets, as you've already said. We are kind of going back a little because I'm painting the bigger picture and the society as it is. And we cannot be proud of our behavior or our priorities as it is until now. Now, what we have tried to do through the feminist foreign policy, we have contributed to girls' education and women employment, and we have been a driving force behind gender equality perspective in the agreements on the Sustainable Development Goals and on financing for development. And we have also championed gender equality work within trade policy and sustainable enterprise. So we have also, of course, highlighted men's responsibility for gender equality work, because that is also important. So this is the bigger frame in which we have been active. What we have done concretely is we have worked a lot on women's enterprise and employment in a number of different countries, from Bolivia to countries in the Balkans. And we have tried to give women the opportunity to be self-employed. We have worked together with the EBRD, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. We have worked with women entrepreneurs in Eastern Europe. So we have, through our embassies around the world, we have engaged in projects of this kind. And that is, of course, a very important part of a feminist foreign policy, to be very concrete. And every year we have established an action plan. So we have established the priorities for our work and done it in practice then in every country. I was thinking also, what do we expect now in the situation that we are in right now? Well, I think it starts with recognition that, first of all, COVID-19 affects women and men differently. This is very clear from reality. More women are in precarious jobs. In the service sector, more women are on the front line of COVID. They are carers and nurses, and they are in the jobs that take care of patients and those affected by COVID. Women have, in general, lower wages and lack access to financing, as we've already heard. And women are subject to violence. And as you've seen from the statistics and the reports, in every country, the level of violence against and the cases of violence against women has gone up. And isn't that a very sad fact? So we expect women to participate fully, but they cannot be secure and safe in their own homes. And this is, of course, a completely horrible and unacceptable situation. And we all have to do whatever we can. And finally, also, if it starts with a recognition, then it has to continue with a plan. How do we deal with all of these elements? And I can maybe settle, since we've already heard so many of the things that can be done concretely when it comes to the economic side. Kristalina Georgieva from the IMF, she said, first of all, countries have to reform their tax systems to make them inclusive. And she's put it very simple: put more money in the hands of women, because that will be well spent money. Invest in people is what she said. Invest in people and establish access to finance also for women. So it can be put that simple and that direct. And what you have provided already are the examples of how it can be done. Now, do we have the money then in this crisis when the world is in a pandemic and everything? Well, I can tell you I'm part of something called the Advisory Board on Disarmament Matters, and reading the the sort of clippings from reports on disarmament, I can tell you, I know where the money is. And it seems to be no lack of money when it comes to investing in militarization and new weapons. And even in the case of the US, an idea about returning to nuclear bomb tests. So money, yes, there is money somewhere. And we just have to go out and look for it. But I plead for for the recognition, for a proper analysis of the situation when it comes to also women's participation and access to financing, to provide them with the possibilities to engage as entrepreneurs and fully participate in society. And we will all benefit from that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margot. That was amazing to have the macro perspective of the real issues that are happening in the world. And it's so good to finish by saying there is money, but unfortunately not invested in the women as we want. But that's a very positive way of going to the second panel. So Susanna, I pass you the floor. And thank you very much for everybody.
Thanks, Maria Noel. We had a really, really broad perspective. We saw the perspective that Margot just gave us, which is the big picture perspective that ends by saying, no doubt, there is money there is money in the kitchen. We saw Hsbc coming with some very interesting views from the European Investment Bank. Of course, we had our colleague, former colleague for me, Luis Felipe, bringing the 2030 agenda perspective and the perspective from UNDP. And Anushka gave us an incredible boost coming from the private sector, where what she said is that this means business, which to me is central. We need to make sure people understand that this means business, because in the end, there is a struggle for power, and we have to make sense, business sense, for this to move forward. I will have a conversation with three women that will bring, again, different views. And I will start with Laura Fernandez. Laura is the head of Women's Economic Empowerment in Fundación Microfinance. Bbva. I was trying to think in Spanish. Bbva. That's what I call confused. Bbva. My goodness, I got confused. My apologies, Laura. We would like to hear from you. We would like to hear from you. How do you see things after all has the discussion we already had?
Thank you very much, Susana. Good morning, Panama. Good afternoon, Europe. It is a pleasure to participate in this important webinar of the Win-Win program, in which we have been participating since 2019. I would like to particularly thank Maria Noel and UN Women for always counting with us, and also Susana Malcorra to put together this initiative and bring the debate to this side of the Atlantic Ocean as well. Let me start by briefly presenting my organization, the Bbva Microfinance Foundation. It was created in 2007 by BBVA in the framework of its CSR to support vulnerable entrepreneurs with productive finance, credit, savings, insurance, and financial education. To date, we have impacted the lives of more than 5 million low-income entrepreneurs, and we have disbursed more than $14 billion. We have created a group of 6 MFIs in 5 countries, and we are reaching more than 2.3 million entrepreneurs today, 60% of which are women. And this, since the outset, this has been one of our main focus. As you might imagine, the pandemic is having devastating consequences for all entrepreneurs, and especially women. Their higher vulnerability levels, their informality, the lack of social protection, novel role of care and income providers have put an extra burden on them in these past months. Data is showing that millions of women are losing their jobs and main sources of income, since the majority of them work or have their micro enterprises in sectors affected by the pandemic. In these difficult times, the priority for us has been to keep them in the center of our activity. COVID-19 has highlighted the role that technology presents. This is an essential and a powerful tool to better serve them. We're already evolving pre-COVID our face-to-face banking model towards greater digitization, improving our distribution channels and improving our value proposition for women. In these past months, our banking agents have been on the side of the clients through WhatsApp, SMS, conference calls, advising them how to transform their businesses and start new activities like the production of face masks or selling online. For many women in Latin America, becoming entrepreneurs was and still is and will be, I think, the only option. Latin America has one of the highest rates of female entrepreneurship, but these are necessity-driven entrepreneurships. We know that. And here, access to financial resources is absolutely essential, and it's still far from their needs. Almost 50% of them are still unbanked, and there is a gender gap of 10 percentage points. And this is a stubborn figure. The IFC estimates a $98 billion US financial gap for women-led SMEs in Latin America. But without financing, it is just impossible to scale or grow any business or lift it out of informality or transforming it into opportunity-driven entrepreneurship. However, microfinance has proved to be effective to improve women's financial access. Let me share with you some of the findings of financing women's businesses that our social performance reports indicate year after year. Second, I will briefly expose what we are doing, and third, how we see the current situation in Latin America. First, financial inclusion improves business performance. Women grow faster than men. They accumulate assets at 25% rates and their surpluses and sales at 20%. Second, they are able to overcome initial poverty levels more rapidly, and they are 83% of all entrepreneurs that have abandoned poverty in the last 5 years. And third, they are capable of all this in spite of their initial economic and social gaps. They are more vulnerable, as I mentioned before. 8 out of 10 are in vulnerability, and a third live under the poverty line. They have lower initial assets and loans. They have economic segregation they are concentrated in low productivity sectors, and they are heads of household. Almost half of them are the only source of income in their households. And this has a negative impact in their business performance as unpaid care work put a strain on them. So our message is clear. When we support women and their businesses, there are positive financial and social returns of the investment, which is exactly what gender lens investment looks for. What are we doing to find innovative solutions to women's needs? With COVID, we are rethinking our strategy, listening more closely to women's needs, profiling them according to their economic activities and social realities, and acknowledging more deeply their digital environment, understanding what are the constraints they're facing. Our aim is to build a specific value proposition with a life cycle approach that aims to cover 3 major needs. First, economic autonomy. We're providing a wide array of innovative products and services, such as specific loans for rural women that do not require land ownership, loans that do not ask for the husband's approval, program savings, group banking, breast cancer insurance, health assistance that include mammograms and checkups for 3 cents a day. And we also provide solutions for their family's well-being, which is the main concern they have: home improvement loans, water sanitation, educational loans. And we want to go further, designing digital products and services. But again, we need to understand what is their reality, just to serve them better. Second, training. Social norms have an impact in self-confidence and financial knowledge. We offer them financial and digital education, and our bank agents are becoming role models for these women in the use of technology. because we have digitized our banking agents and we have digital banking apps. So they are becoming role models in the use of technology for women. And third, access to networks. We know women have lower mobility and access to networks due to the unpaid work they carry out. We offer them connections among them and with the markets. And we have some digital experience in digital marketplaces, and we are going further, creating broader digital communities where they can get information, training, network, and role models. Apparently, COVID is having also positive impact on investors because they're increasingly considering social environment and governance issues. And there is a spike in the demand for this kind of bonds, as my colleague from Hsbc was saying before. But there's still a way to go. At Bbva Microfinance Foundation, we're also taking steps to mobilize private resources towards female entrepreneurs. And we intend to issue an ESG bond, Emisión Social, in Chile in the following months, which will have a gender lens, and we will also look to expand in other countries where we are present. The potential is just there. Investors just need to see it. Our challenge is to bring them to the table, to speak their language, and to fight the stereotypes that women are risky business, because it is exactly the opposite. So this is what the challenge we have ahead of us. Women are still one of the underexploited assets in the world, and we need to support them and to overcome this pandemic. And now it is more necessary than ever, in our view. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. I will have to ask the remaining speakers to be cognizant of the time, because we have an audience that was expecting us to finish in 15 minutes. So Susan Siegel, President and CEO of the American Society, Council of the Americans, another good friend. Susan, you have done an equivalent event. You have prepared an equivalent event based in New York. So probably you can bring the perspective from the Americas since you had a conversation like this. Over to you, Susan. You are muted. You are muted.
There we go. First of all, it is so wonderful to see you, Suzanne. I hope we can see each other in person very soon. And thank you for your kind words, Maria Noel. I'm so pleased to be here. So as I thought about this, and I thought about the conversation we had around Latin America, I really think it's not about innovative financing. It's about access to capital. And I find that incredibly bewildering because female entrepreneurs produce 2.5 times more revenue. And research shows that, in fact, they produce more revenue than their male counterparts. And the Kauffman Foundation recently found that they produce 35% better returns. And as we all know, diversity is the name of the game. One point of view never takes you anywhere. So in some ways, Latin America, upon researching, I did more research after our last meeting, is a little bit ahead of some of the other regions. Because if you looked at the mixed female-male teams, we have about 15% women, and I'm talking about venture capital, high impact companies. But there are only 4% of pure women businesses. In Europe, that would be 11% and 4, and in the US, that would be 14 and 8. Now, in Latin America, one of the things that's really interesting, if you look at dollars, those were volumes. In dollars, Latin America has given about 16% of the money to teams that are male and female founders, but only 1% to pure female teams. What that tells me is the bigger rounds of financing are going to all men or mixed, not to women. And one of the biggest, obviously, companies and the most sophisticated so far is Nubank, and Cristina Huguera, who was one of the co-founders, and she's just terrific. But one of the things, and I will be fast, Susanna, because I'm going to take you at your word. One of the things that's really interesting, though, is that I think that one of the reasons there isn't more funding for women is there aren't enough venture capitalists that are women. Only 7% of the venture capitalists in Latin America are women. And there was a 2019 study which said that women are 3 times more likely to invest in women businesses than men. So basically, if there are no women venture capitalists, how is it going to be possible to quickly ramp up the number of businesses that get rounds of venture funding? And the other thing, which I think is absolutely clear, is there are very few women unicorns in Latin America. Women that have gone out and built businesses today are worth over $1 billion. And so we don't have women venture capitalists who invest the money. We don't have women role models that have become unicorns. And most importantly, we do not have, and I think this is really important, we don't have the networks, the mentors, the ecosystems. So, if you think about venture capital, it runs on an ecosystem. It's not, you don't have to guess why so much is concentrated in Silicon Valley and other places. They're concentrated because they want to be around other venture capitalists and other entrepreneurs, because it's that ecosystem that drives and builds businesses. So when I sit back and I think, what can we do in Latin America? Not just in Latin America, frankly, in Europe and in the United States. First thing is we need to get more money into the hands of women, to the women venture capitalists. Now, that's easier said than done, because this is all circular. If women, if there aren't more women venture capitalists, part of the reason is it's much harder for women to raise venture capital. So I think here there is a role, and I think some of the development banks in Latin America have played that role, but even more so to direct more money into the hands of women venture capitalists, because they are more likely to produce and invest in women businesses. So that's one thing that can happen. But there are also a number of development banks within each country. And those development banks that dedicate money to venture capital could allocate some also directly to women venture capitalists. And frankly, with those women taking on certain obligations, such as to create an ecosystem, to do more training, to do more engagement. The second thing is that I think there's an incredible role for women. And I say myself, like women like you, Susanna, or Maria Noel, for us to mentor and help build these ecosystems, right? And to push men that are venture capitalists and successful venture capitalists to build out these ecosystems for women. I know, for example, when we were had our meeting in New York, we invited Hernan Kazak, and he is today trying to target a very high percentage, between 35 and 50% of all the companies they invest in. They're trying to invest in women and fund women entrepreneurs. With that, you can begin to really create the ecosystems you need. So I think that there's a lot we can do. FinTech, another area, critical, because FinTech is not only an enormous opportunity for women entrepreneurs, but it is an enormous opportunity to empower women throughout the economic curve and make them more financially literate. And that's how you get that money into the hands also of SMEs that may not be high impact. So my conclusion is we've come a little way. We have a lot more to go, but we have to really deal with the root causes of why we don't have more women entrepreneurs and enable all of the pieces so that, in fact, we can get more funding for women entrepreneurs, not in 10 years, not in 5 years, but over the next few years, because the more we do each year, the more we'll do the following year. And with that, I hope I stayed within my time limit.
Thanks, Susan. Not surprising, you were to the point and with a call to action. Let me now turn the floor to Jessica Schnabel, Global Head Banking on Women Financial Institutions Group, International Financial Corporation. And Jessica, over to you.
Thank you, Susanna. The former CEO of IFC once told me that the key to success is to put yourself in a room full of powerful people with good ideas. And I feel like I am in one of those rooms today. So thank you very much for allowing me to be part of this. I've been so engaged in the discussion so far. The perspective perhaps that I bring today is one of an investor in private sector financial institutions in emerging markets, an investor who knows that investing in women, particularly in women-owned businesses, as well as employees and leaders, is an investment that brings financial returns to companies, brings economic returns to countries. And through IFC's work in banking on women, we've seen over the past 10 years of the banking on women business where we've invested in and provided expertise to financial institutions in over 50 countries, over 100 financial institutions. We know that women, and particularly women-owned companies, are a source of growth and financial returns and prosperity, particularly for financial institutions. And so when I reflect on the discussion that has happened today, I realize that there is a general awareness that COVID has brought on a particularly difficult situation and threatens to exacerbate some of the financial gaps and access gaps that we already see. We know that there's a $1.5 trillion demand for financing among women-owned SMEs, and we expect that to grow. If I move from some of the barriers which so many of you have elaborated on so well and get right to what I see as the areas of growth, because as you know, as IFC, we're investing in private sector companies, and it's our responsibility to bring to financial institutions in my world what we see as areas of growth. I would say the following. First, certainly investing in women-owned small businesses. You know, that is the bread and butter of the banking on women business, and we receive returns. We have done very well doing that. The financial institution clients that we work with have also done very well. Second, as was mentioned earlier, I think that there's a big capital markets movement going on, and there's a lot of interest, investor interest, in socially responsible investing. But perhaps the spin on that I would introduce is that whether or not it's socially responsible, we know that companies that can issue gender bonds are able to access the kinds of investors that they may not have had access to before. IFC worked with our partner Guarantee Bbva in Turkey a couple of years ago to launch the first ever gender bond issued by a private sector financial institution. And we've since worked with a bank in Thailand, Ayuda, as well as a bank in Indonesia, OCBC and ISP, to launch gender bonds. And I'm seeing so much positive activity in the gender bond space in Latin America, Europe, Asia, Africa, the Middle East. Second trend, I would say, is really looking at housing and asset finance for women to both unblock barriers, but also as a source of growth. And I'm excited to announce that our gender housing business will be able to announce its first investment specifically for women's mortgages later today. The third important area I think is on trend right now is insurance and risk mitigation for women customers and women-owned businesses, because we know that risk mitigation for health and also business and financial health is extremely important and so far underprovided. And the last trend that I'm particularly focused on right now is the effect and the impact of fintech, AI, and really data-based firms on gender. And I think it's going to be increasingly important to make sure that there is a gender lens in all of these activities, to use them as tools to analyze and finance women in a better way. Last, I will say that as I think about a call to action for what we can do in this room full of powerful people with good ideas, I would say two things. I have a call to action for those of us who are engaged with public sector. And I would say this: gender disaggregated data sex disaggregated data is one of the most important and powerful tools that we all can use to catalyze access to not only financial services, but social services to women as well. We know that Chile, for example, has been collecting gender disaggregated data in the financial sector for over 10 years, and it's had a powerful impact. The second call to action I would make would be to investors, and particularly investors in financial sector companies and financial service providers. And that is investors, those who are forward-looking, are already demanding to have bottom line returns as well as gender impact, because they know that including women in their investments is a source of growth for them. So I would encourage investors to continue asking for and demanding information about the gender impacts of the financial institutions and the companies that they are investing in. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. I will not even try to sum up because each one of you has provided a great number of ideas and actions to move forward. I will just mention, I have to make the case that what you said about Chile is not surprising. Michelle Bachelet was the president when this was enacted. So women do make a difference for women, and that's what we have to achieve. So without trying to summarize, I will pass the floor to Maria Ines so that we can move forward. Thanks so much for your great ideas, passion, and energy.
Thank you very much. This has been an interesting conversation, and I would like to mention that we have received comments from Liberia, Uganda, Jamaica, Honduras, Argentina, Chile, Colombia, and Indonesia. So this event was not only Europe and Latin America, but other regions too. This is very interesting. And now for the closing remarks, I would like to welcome Soraya Obeid, W20 Chair, former Executive Director of the United Nations Population Fund, and former Undersecretary General of the United Nations. Please, Soraya Obeid, you have the floor.
Thank you, Maria, for the introduction, and thank you for the honor to present the closing statement, which I hope will resonate with your discussions and recommendations. And with such rich discussions, I will try my best to finish within the thanks to UN Women, a close knowledge partner with W20 Saudi this year. UN Women is part of my past at UNFPA, where we work together for gender equality in a complementary way. I also would like to point out that ILO, OECD, ITC, IBRD, along with Accenture, were critical in supporting W20 as knowledge partners, and to them we are grateful. As I waved back to Margot, memories flashed about her very strong and courageous statement to the Security Council on Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security, defending the rights of women victims of violence in countries suffering from conflicts and war, and shaming the perpetrators. And I thought at that time, wow, what a courageous and strong leader. As I listened to Margot now, I thought our collective hearts and minds are very much in the same place. Special thanks to Susanna Malcorra, whose heart and mind is also in the right place. I met her when she was Deputy Executive Director of the UN World Food Programme. We worked very closely together, and especially as she was the Chef de Cabinet of the SG. She pushed for much reform to bring coherence to the UN system and to promote women within the system, especially when she dealt with peace and security issues and humanitarian assistance. I'm happy she can now be in an academic institution where she can impart the lessons learned through her professional career into global and public diplomacy. And this makes me happy because I'm a big proponent of intergenerational dialogue and mutual mentoring. The issue of this forum has been discussed previously and continues until this moment. However, with more urgency, frankness, courage, and insistence due to the impact of COVID. The G20 engagement groups, W20, B20, Youth 20, C20, have been engaged with the same issues of this forum. And I encourage you to look up the G20 Ministers of Labor and Employment commitment about women and business with special reference to women entrepreneurs. But is there a silver lining to COVID-19? Change was coming to our lives with the intrusion of digital technology. We were already facing our computers long hours, whether at work, home, or schools and universities. COVID-19 made us stand naked in front of the various inequalities that it has uncovered, and we cannot say we do not see the inequalities, and it is not my responsibility. In other words, it forced us to face the reality as it is, and therefore we have to take action. COVID-19 speeded up this change and enclosed us in this virtual world of communication. We even hardly make phone calls anymore. WhatsApp has taken over, and we can't even remember telephone numbers anymore. But if there is one overwhelming silver lining to this pandemic, it is that the world discovered, and I put it between quotes, that women are the backbone of the response effects, for they constituted 70% of the global healthcare workforce and 76% of unpaid caregivers globally. Fighting the pandemic would not have been possible without these women. Finally, the world is repeating what has been said since the first conference on women in Mexico in 1975, and through three more conferences, Copenhagen in 1980, Nairobi 85, and finally Beijing in 1990. Women must be empowered because they add wealth and health to the globe. We celebrate this year the 20th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action. It is followed by Sustainable Development Goals 2030 that sets targets to be achieved by 2030, and governments are required to report on their efforts to meet these targets. However, a study by the World Economic Forum indicated that with the present speed of implementation, it would take 200 years to reach the 2030 target of SDG 5 on the empowerment of women. So this forum and many more, and the work of the W20 and other G20 engagements group are all timely to declare the threat of the pandemic on existing achievements, to push the agenda forward and to expand it, as you are doing right now, with a focus on women in businesses and especially women entrepreneurs. I heard what I will say resonate, I already know with you because that's what I heard. But there were two comments. Allow me to make comments about them quickly. One was that one of the colleagues mentioned that there is a behavioral issue among women and men, where 67% of the women wear masks, men wear less than that. And that was a rational decision. I think it's the issue here is that because women have to think about more than themselves. They have to think about their families, their community, and not so they wear it to protect others. Ashoka said also that women were left behind in the post-COVID life. I'd like you to check, please, the statement of the G20 Labor and Employment Ministers. It was adopted on 10 September. So you can hold them accountable for commitments that they had made. Now, just a quick note on W20. It was established in Turkey 2015, and we're celebrating its 5th anniversary this year. G20 didn't wear a lens when they formed the engagement groups, and that's why the W20 came much later than when they started before. You will find much of my comments right now resonating with your comments, but there are 4 key words that permeate the work that all of us are doing during this period of working to build our society, not to build back better. I don't like this word. It's to build forward better, because what happened in the past is not good. It brought us to where we are right now. So we need to build forward better. 4 words have resonated in all of the fora in which I have been participating: diversity, inclusion, rights, accountability. This is where we are and what we need to do. The heart of our story and demands is inclusion in every institution where women serve and work, whether paid or unpaid. Without women voices, wisdom, experience, lessons learned, multitasking skills and insights into the social fabric of their society, policy decisions are incomplete, truncated, and not centered on people, all people, women and men, young and old. Therefore, the most critical inclusion in decision-making at all levels of institutions is the beginning for W20. We inherited 3 legacies from the past W20s: labor inclusion, financial inclusion, and digital inclusion. This year, W20 added inclusion in decision-making as the 4th pillar. And we also adopted women entrepreneurship as a cross-cutting issue that impacts on finance, labor, digital, and decision-making. And the background of all of this is accountability of the G20 leaders of commitments that they have made. I will provide here a few of the recommendations of the W20 which are relevant to our discussion today, including the economic recovery. These recommendations are complementary. They were adopted by the W20 delegates a few months ago. We closed the agreement then, but we will adopt it formally on 20 October. And we have used the time until the G20 summit, the leaders summit in November, to advocate for the recommendations with all the Sherpas, political actors, individual member states, and other engagement groups. So on inclusive decision-making, I will mention 2 of the recommendations: to ensure equal representation of women at all levels of decision-making in national and global political and economic bodies, including in the private and public sectors. The second one is to increase the number of women decision makers in business by taking the necessary steps, including targets and quotas, to ensure full gender parity on the boards of public and listed companies by 2030, providing incentives for employers that achieve gender parity in decision-making positions. On legal and social reform, I will mention just one recommendation: use all levers of policy and political will to enable transformative shift in stereotyping social norms and gender roles, including men's responsibility for care work that deter women from achieving their full economic potential. On equitable labor, I will mention 3 quick ones: increase investment in social infrastructure to create jobs and build resilience, including providing affordable and quality child dependence and elder care. 2, implement social and income protection mechanisms for alternative employment models to ensure appropriate coverage for all workers in the formal and informal economy, with special attention to essential workers, part-time workers, self-employed, and vulnerable groups, particularly in low-income countries. And 3, develop and fund action plans to stimulate women's participation in entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystems by supporting startups, scale-up and sustainability of women-owned businesses, particularly in e-commerce and digital economy. On equitable financial inclusion, I'll mention 3: develop and promote innovative and easily accessible financial solutions and products, including digital tool and microfinance in partnership with public and private financial institutions to increase women's access to finance. 2, develop and promote financial education programs, especially for disadvantaged women and girls, to improve women's financial literacy, skills, confidence, and entrepreneurial capacity. And 3, mandate public and private financial institutions to collect sex disaggregated data with the purpose of understanding different gender implications on financial outcomes and investment decision-making. On equitable digital inclusion, I will only mention one: apply gender lens to measure the digital economy by tracking the impact of artificial intelligence and tech-led shifts in the demand for jobs, skills, and growth for women. On women entrepreneurship, I'll mention three also: develop policy frameworks and action plans and provide financial support, training, and programs to strengthen women participation in entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystems and to build women's capacity. 2, offer incentives and targeted programs to increase the number of women-owned and women-led companies, including in e-commerce and STEM. 3, create conditions to build capacity and increase opportunities for women-owned and women-led businesses to access markets by setting national year-on-year goals with regard to procurement, international trade, and e-commerce. Set a target of 10% increase in public procurement by 2030 and report on annual progress on women's access to these markets. And finally, on G20 accountability, we asked for strengthening the G20 monitoring and evaluation frameworks and indicators. I'll mention one of them: by systematically reviewing policies implemented and progress made, by calling upon the OECD and ILO to continue reporting annually to G20 leaders on the Brisbane target of 25 by 25 on each G20 member's annual employment plan reporting. This initiative is basically about reducing the gender gap in labor market participation by 25% by 2025. In conclusion, I would like to make one request that I deem strategic and very operational: mentoring. It is critical that women mentor each other and provide mutual support within institutions, companies, and especially women entrepreneurs in the informal sector. Within this idea, I call upon all of us to enter into what I call intergenerational dialogue, because it allows us, all this, to learn the new world that is unfolding in front of us, and we can impart some of our experiences and know-how to the young generation that is very skilled in modern technology, but they lack 2 C's: context and consequences. Young people have no patience to read reports or to dig in the history of programs, projects, or institutions itself. But there is a wealth of institutional memory that might, just might, help young people understand both the context of the work and the consequences of their decisions. And I will end with 2 quotes from Kristalina Georgieva, Managing Director of IMF. She spoke with the New York Times on her, something called In Her Words, 29 July 2020. She said that IMF policies on gender, they have adopted the responsive physical policies, investing in education, health, childcare, parental leave, which are often underestimated issues. She said that gender responsible budgeting makes sense, and I'm quoting her, because economics of gender equality is a book already written, and I unquote. If they were equal, the world wealth will be trillions bigger, she said. We need to remember Eleanor Roosevelt's words. She said, and I quote, "Women are like tea bags, they get stronger in hot water," unquote. They are resilient at this time of shock and have more empathy for children, the elderly, and people with disability. That's what she said. IMF supports participation in decision-making. And she said, "Christine Lagarde broke the glass ceiling and opened the way for me. And she did this, I have no scratches on me. And she said, I walked in her post easily. Christina started by ensuring increasing the number of women in decision-making levels at IMF. And now Kristalina is running with it, she said. Women are now 35% in the senior level positions, and she's working on parity at all levels. We all have broken glass ceilings in one way or another. It is time we support other women, especially young women, to pass through the open doors unharmed and without any scratches. I thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Soraya. It's a pleasure to listen to you again. We miss you in the UN. It's this amazing strength that you have and the vision that you always provide us. I want to thank you, everybody. I don't want to retain you because I know that we are running out of time. Thank you so much for all these call of actions that we heard and for being part of this ecosystem that we are not going to leave you calm. We will continue and we will strengthen all this amazing network that we are creating together with Susanna and the University EI, also with ILO and with the generosity of the European Union. So thank you for everybody, and this will continue. So stay put. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.